Know yet if you're going to be the number 2, but how excited, how ready, how great would that be for you to have an opportunity to go out there and back up Dylan in this game in Pittsburgh?
Oh, well, no, we're going to make sure we do everything we can to make sure Dylan ready for the game. So, whatever that means. So each and every day, even when Joe was the starter, everything, prepare the right way and be ready to know that you could get out there at any point in time. So, I'm overly confident.
The second Shedeur Sanders got named QB2, Cleveland went absolutely wild. Ticket lines blew up like a Black Friday stampede at Best Buy. Fans weren't just buying seats, they were fighting for them like it was the last golden ticket on Earth. Attendance didn't rise, it shot straight into orbit. Folks camped outside the stadium overnight, wrapped in blankets like they were waiting on a new iPhone release. Even Grandma out here yelling about offensive schemes like she's been breaking down film for years. Forget the scoreboard. The real victory was Shedeur turning an ordinary matchup into a cultural phenomenon. The Browns versus the Steelers wasn't just a game anymore. It became the social event of the year. Taylor Swift could walk into another Chiefs game, and it still wouldn't touch this energy. The moment Shedeur's name appeared next to QB2, Cleveland combusted into pure chaos.
It's official. Shedeur Sanders is going to be QB2, and quite frankly, there was no way in hell that you could make Bailey Zappi QB number 2. I don't care what the argument that you have is for it. This was the only right move. Now, again, as a Browns fan, I'm intrigued to see how Dillon Gabriel responds to all of this, knowing that Shedeur Sanders is going to be over his shoulder now, knowing that every single pass is going to have an even bigger microscope on him. It will tell me a lot about the type of dog that Dillon Gabriel is or isn't. Now, the even bigger question is Kevin Stefanski going to put Dillon Gabriel in the position to ultimately succeed?
Ticket sales didn't just sell out, they evaporated. Scalpers were out here crying in public, and rumor has it, people were offering body parts just to get in. The city looked like Coachella met the Super Bowl, but for a backup. That's the Shedeur effect. People weren't there for touchdowns, they came to witness destiny unfold before their eyes. It didn't matter if he was throwing passes or just holding a clipboard, that clipboard might as well have been a sacred artifact. Fans weren't watching a player.
Let's be real here. The Dylan second start is not as big a story as Shedeur being the backup, because Shedeur does have sizzle. Some of that's media creation, some of that's Shedeur Kemp's creation, and
some of that, in this case, was the Browns' creation. In many ways, they could have stopped the story on Tuesday.
I think that's 100% right, and so I think
we need to highlight that a little bit, don't we?
Go ahead.
Oh, just the idea that like everyone's like, oh, it's always on Shedeur. It's always Shedeur's fault. He's the one that brings all this attention. He's the one that brings this and all that. Well, I mean, the Browns could have easily stopped this thing on Tuesday.
They were watching a prophecy in progress. The hype was straight up unreal. Fans were pulling up 5 hours early, grilling burgers, blasting music, acting like the Super Bowl had just relocated to their neighborhood. Everywhere you looked, Shedeur jerseys, posters, even homemade banners flapping in the wind like gospel. One dude really showed up with a goat in sunglasses, rocking a number 2 jersey. Cleveland was officially losing it. Suddenly, everyone and their cousin claimed they'd been Browns fans since day one. Even folks who couldn't find Ohio on a map, if you circled it in red. The vibe inside the stadium, absolute madness. It felt like Beyoncé had just dropped a surprise halftime show announcement, or Drake promised to perform right there on the 50-yard line. But no, all that noise was for one man, Shedeur Sanders, the rookie, the backup, the phenom, who hadn't even played a real NFL snap yet. His name alone had that entire building shaking like an earthquake. Browns fans were screaming like they hit Powerball, and Steelers fans were pretending not to care while sneakily watching Shedeur highlight reels on their phones. From warm-ups to kickoff, it was pure chaos. Deshaun Watson could have thrown the cleanest spiral of his life, and not one soul would have cared. Every move Shedeur made.
What do you think made this decision? Was it a collective, or was it AB called pulling rank?
Well, AB and the owner, I think that's why Flacco was traded, to make this possible. Now, I won't say Kevin doesn't like Shedeur. I don't think Kevin believes Shedeur is ready, even for the number 2 role. Okay, it's not that he doesn't like him. He's a coach and he sees everything through a quarterback lens. and he just doesn't believe he's ready.
Was a headline. He tossed a 10-yard pass. The crowd erupted. He tied his shoelaces. People cheered. You'd think he just scored the game winner, but nope. That's just what happens when the legend steps on the field. He waved at one kid in the stands. Just one. And suddenly that kid's parents were calling him the future of football. The poor kid's probably signing an NIL deal just for breathing the same air as Shedeur. The whole stadium turned into a movie set. Season ticket holders who hadn't shown their faces since 2021 were suddenly front row, decked out in orange and brown, acting like they'd been loyal through every losing season. Even the food vendors got in on the madness. They were selling QB2 special hot dogs, primetime Shedeur nachos, and Sanders sauce wings, which were literally just regular barbecue with a $5 markup. But people didn't care. They were buying them like collectibles.
But the Cleveland Browns just made a splash announcement that says, yeah, boy, Shedeur Sanders is now number 2 quarterback in Cleveland behind Dylan Gabriel. Well, let me tell you something. People say, gee, Bush, you about to do victory laps. Nah. That is not what we on today. No victory laps here. We right back to work. This was never the goal. The goal is not to be good enough to take backup reps. The goal ain't good enough to be.
Within 20 minutes, every number 2 jersey in the entire building was gone. Somewhere, a Nike exec was probably popping champagne, yelling, "We did it again!" Meanwhile, on the other side, the Steelers looked like they were walking into enemy territory. Mike Tomlin had that classic, "Why are there celebrities in the front row for this game?" face. His players couldn't even hear play calls over the crowd, screaming Shedeur's name like it was a concert. It was full-on psychological warfare. Pittsburgh fans showed up ready to boo Cleveland, but instead, they accidentally walked into the Shedeur Sanders Fan Expo. When kickoff finally came, even the cameras couldn't help themselves. They kept cutting back to the Browns sideline. Nobody cared about the scoreboard anymore. They were all tuned in to see what Shedeur would do next. Every few minutes, the cameras would cut to Shedeur standing there, helmet off, cool as ice, eyes locked on the field, and the crowd would explode. You'd swear he just launched a 70-yard bomb to win the game. The energy was electric, almost spiritual. You could feel every fan silently chanting the same thing, "Just put him in already." The Steelers' defense didn't know whether to focus on the run or the cameras. They were trying to sack Deshaun Watson, but every slow-motion replay made it look like they were extras in the Rise of Shedeur Sanders documentary. By halftime, the scoreboard meant nothing. Nobody cared about stats. This was pure Hollywood. Fans were gossiping like it was a red carpet premiere. "Did you see how calm Shedeur looked when he took off that headset?" one said. "He's saving himself for the comeback," another whispered. Then came the dramatic gasp. "Wait, did he just wink at the camera? Oh, it's happening!" Every tiny move turned into a prophecy. Every glance, every gesture, fans were reading it like scripture. And somehow he did the unthinkable. Shedeur Sanders made the sidelines the main event of the entire NFL. Even the commentators couldn't resist. "That's a first down for Cleveland," one said. And speaking of firsts, we might be witnessing the first backup quarterback to outsell the starter in ticket sales.
Cleveland Browns just made a splash announcement that says, yeah, boy, Shedeur Sanders is now number 2 quarterback in Cleveland behind Dylan Gabriel. Well, let me tell you something. People say, gee, Bush, you about to do victory laps. Nah. That is not what we on today. No victory laps here. We right back to work. This was never the goal. The goal is not to be good enough to take backup reps. The goal ain't good enough to be hanging around and serviceable. The goal is to be legendary.
The crowd loved every second of it. Then came the moment that set the stadium on fire. Deshaun Watson took a tough hit, limped off for just one play, and the fans lost their minds. The noise was unreal. It wasn't about the injury, it was about what might happen next. The city of Cleveland was begging for destiny to step onto that field. They weren't cheering for a play, they were cheering for destiny. The second Shedeur grabbed his helmet and jogged toward the field, the stadium erupted. It wasn't football anymore. It was a full-blown movie premiere mixed with a revival and a viral TikTok challenge, all happening in real life. The second his cleats hit the turf, the noise was so loud you could barely think. Linemen were screaming at each other, trying to call plays, but it was hopeless. Nobody could hear a thing. The Steelers looked stunned, like they'd accidentally walked into a flash mob dedicated to Shedeur Sanders. Then it happened. His first snap, just a basic handoff, nothing fancy, but the crowd reacted like he'd just thrown the winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. Fans were losing their voices, waving towels, some even crying tears of joy. One camera angle even caught a fan straight up fainting, paramedics and all. It was chaos and the good kind. And then came the moment.
Myles Garrett had wonderful things to say about Shedeur Sanders in an interview yesterday, just basically talking about how hard he works, how prepared he is, how he takes the initiative to meet with Coach Kevin Stefanski on a daily basis, seemingly, in his office to make sure he's on top of the plays. Followed by Denzel Ward and Jerry Jeudy also having high praise for Shedeur Sanders, all three echoing that Shedeur Sanders
That sealed the legend. Next drive, short pass play, no drama expected. Shedeur dropped back smooth as silk, eyes locked, and fired a perfect laser right down the middle for a first down. The stadium exploded. That wasn't just a pass, it was a declaration. The crowd went wild like they were witnessing history unfold in real time. The Steelers' defense started unraveling, not because of poor execution, but because the crowd had officially taken over the game. The entire city of Cleveland was hypnotized, living inside the Shedeur era. By the fourth quarter, the scoreboard didn't even matter anymore. Cleveland could have been up by 20 or down by 20, and nobody cared. All that mattered was that Shedeur Sanders had arrived. The crowd couldn't get enough. They were addicted to the moment. Every single time Shedeur's face popped up on the Jumbotron, the stadium erupted like it was a rock concert. The wave wasn't out of boredom, it was out of pure adrenaline. People were too hyped to sit still. Even the mascots were jumping around like they just won the lottery. Vendors were dancing with trays of hot dogs in the air, spilling mustard and loving every second of it. It was beautiful, wild, glorious chaos. When the final whistle blew, it wasn't just the end of a football game, it was the Shedeur Sanders coronation. Reporters swarmed him like paparazzi chasing a superstar. Fans refused to leave their seats, still chanting his name like a choir that didn't want the song to end. The entire stadium was vibrating with belief. This wasn't hype anymore. This was history happening live.
News just broke, the news that everybody's been waiting for, it seems like, all week long. But head coach Kevin Stefanski for the Browns has confirmed Shedeur Sanders will be the backup quarterback, the QB2, for Sunday's game in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. So Shedeur Sanders, who started the offseason program back in May and June and all training camp as the QB4, now finds himself all the way up at QB2, just a one snap away from seeing the field, and we're only in weeks.
Shedeur Sanders did what no one else ever had. He made being QB2 more thrilling, more marketable, and more iconic than being QB1. He turned the bench into a brand, the waiting game into a movement. The city of Cleveland had officially fallen in love. Shedeur's presence had transformed everything. Browns games weren't just football anymore, they were events. You could see it in the fans' eyes. That spark of hope they hadn't felt in decades. Cleveland finally believed again. And the crazy part? Their new symbol of hope wasn't a starter or a superstar. It was a young man wearing number 2, headset in hand, radiating confidence, and commanding more attention than the president himself. Social media went absolutely insane. Hashtags like Shedeur Takeover and QB2 era were blowing up across every platform. ESPN was looping his warm-up throws like they were Super Bowl highlights. Commentators were debating if he'd take over the starting job by mid-season. But Cleveland didn't need to wonder. They already knew. Even rival fans couldn't deny it. Shedeur had that rare energy, that once-in-a-generation charisma that made football fun again. Inside the Browns locker room, the vibe had completely shifted. Players couldn't stop talking about how calm, collected, and locked in he was. Man, his focus just lifts everybody.
Shedeur's a better quarterback than Dillon Gabriel. I've been vocal about that. But like the bet that Shedeur has made is that Dillon's the better quarterback. I'm gonna give Stefanski the chance to go ahead and prove me wrong and show me that he's right.
The offense does need to show progress, by the way. But the number one thing is, to the idea of Dillon could feel any more heat because Shedeur's behind him. I'm sure there's probably part of that because it's the NFL, and I think Dylan is very cognizant of how
One of them said, you could feel it, even through a TV screen. That spark, that glow, that magnetic pull that made you believe you were watching the beginning of something historic. It wasn't just confidence, it was destiny in motion. And think about this. All of it came from him being named QB2. Just imagine what's going to happen when he's QB1. Cleveland, the city that's been kicked around by bad football luck for decades, finally had a reason to smile again. And that reason wore the name Sanders. Nobody saw it coming this fast. They thought he'd rise someday. Not right now. But here's the wild part. Nobody's mad about it. Fans are loving every second of this ride. The franchise once known for heartbreak has suddenly become the most talked about team in the entire NFL. And all it took was Shedeur Sanders standing on the sideline with that calm grin. The kind that says, I already know how this story ends. Because deep down, so does everyone else. The Browns versus Steelers showdown, that was just the trailer for the movie that's about to take over the league. The next time that camera pans to Shedeur on the sidelines, you already know what's coming. The entire stadium is going to erupt. Because at this point, it's not about stats anymore. It's about spectacle. Fans aren't just buying tickets to watch football. They're buying tickets to be part of a story. And that story is just getting started.
Care who's number one? The worldwide news right now is 3 is still 3. Why isn't he 2? The world wants to see him get this chance. This reminds me of the Bronny situation. Dylan, you want to be Quincy. He was the one who got that contract. You want to be 3rd. You want Shedeur to go out there and then have a horrible time, and then you come in and have good moments. So you look good. You going out there first, no one's rooting for you. Unless you out this mother perfect. Everything you do is going to be a target. Oh, man, look, it was okay. He had 3 turnovers. He did this. And eventually, you're going to be getting booed by that Cleveland Browns.
As long as Shedeur Sanders is rocking that Browns jersey, Cleveland's attendance is locked at maximum chaos. After the game, the parking lot looked like Mardi Gras crashed into the Super Bowl. People were dancing on car hoods, music blasting, strangers hugging like lifelong friends. Cleveland was officially unhinged in the most beautiful way possible. Everywhere you turned, phones were out, people were live streaming, vlogging, filming TikToks. The city had become one massive movie set. ESPN didn't even need their own cameramen anymore. The fans had every angle covered, front row to nosebleeds. Meanwhile, the media went crazy. Talk shows, podcasts, sports networks, everyone was scrambling to make sense of what they just witnessed. Analysts had charts, graphs, and data models on screen trying to explain the impossible, how a QB2 announcement had caused ticket sales to skyrocket and a city to lose its collective mind. But it wasn't about stats or analytics or game plans, it was charisma. Pure, raw, untouchable charisma that had Cleveland acting like they just discovered football for the very first time. And the funniest part? The Steelers were furious. The Steelers flew home in total disbelief, heads shaking, ears still ringing, realizing they'd just been cast as background characters in someone else's fairy tale. Mike Tomlin probably ripped up his post-game speech halfway through and just muttered,
Yet if Shedeur is ready to be your number 2 quarterback for this game?
Yeah, Shedeur will be the backup.
You're thinking in that?
Yeah, like I told you guys on Wednesday, I'm always thinking about our players and what's best for our players, and I want to make sure when it comes to young football players, particularly at the quarterback position, that you are intentional about your decision making, and that's really all it is. So excited for all of our guys.
Forget it. This was destiny. Even his players couldn't deny what they'd witnessed. Some admitted later it was the loudest crowd they'd ever played against, and half that noise came from people cheering for a man who wasn't even starting. By the next morning, Cleveland looked like it had just won the Super Bowl. Billboards popped up overnight screaming, "The future is now." People were honking, celebrating, posting videos like the Browns had just rewritten NFL history, all because of a backup quarterback. Even rival teams couldn't escape it. The Ravens tried to hype up their own quarterback on social media, but their comments were instantly flooded with Browns fans chanting "Shedeur time." That's when it hit. This wasn't just hype. This was global takeover energy. Every sports outlet, meme page, and NFL forum on the planet was suddenly talking about Cleveland. People who hadn't watched a Browns game in a decade were now glued to their screens, not for touchdowns or highlights, but to witness the phenomenon himself, the guy who made history simply by existing on the depth chart. But here's the craziest part. This wasn't the kind of hype that fades after a weekend. Oh no, this was the start of something unstoppable. Weeks passed, and the Shedeur Sanders effect refused to fade. It only grew louder. Every press conference, every practice clip, every sideline glance went viral within minutes. Reporters didn't even bother asking about game strategy anymore.
To see him play, to see if he's good or not. That's just the way it is. No one cares about the rest. It's him, then Myles Garrett at this point. When we're talking about jersey sales, he's number one. At this point, if you're Cleveland, why are you still putting yourself under this guillotine? I understand why. You don't want to make yourself look stupid. We wanted him. We think he's it. He is the proven one. And we don't want you to go out there and perform very well. Makes us look stupid that we picture and fit. So you're fighting an inner fight anyway. There's really nothing you can do. So if you're Shedeur, he's not in a position and say, what the you asking me for? What do I need to do?
Every question circled back to one name, Shedeur. ESPN panels turned into debates about when, not if, he'd take over as QB1. Cleveland had officially become the epicenter of the NFL universe. Bars were throwing QB2 nights, selling Shedeur slushies and backup burgers. Local radio hosts started opening their shows with his name. Fans were calling in just to yell, "Put him in already!" The city was on fire, and for the first time in decades, it wasn't from disappointment, but from pure excitement. And while the world obsessed over the spectacle, Shedeur stayed calm, unbothered, focused, cool, under pressure. He walked through the chaos like he'd been here before, smiling that same confident grin that made people believe he already knew how the story would unfold. His teammates felt it, the fans felt it, even rival coaches couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't just a player, this was a movement. Every snap in practice felt like a prophecy. Every clip on social media felt like a chapter in a legend still being written. The Browns didn't just find their quarterback of the future, they found their cultural reset button. And as cameras zoomed in on that familiar number 2 jersey shining under the stadium lights, one thing was crystal clear. Cleveland hadn't just discovered hope again, they discovered Shedeur Sanders, the man who turned a bench into a revolution.
I said it from the beginning. Shedeur was number 2 when Joe Flacco got traded. Stefanski, the coach, was just being coy because he didn't want teams to game plan. I said that. I said that Shedeur was number 2 already. Y'all were overreacting. A few of you told me that I was dumb and my argument made no sense, but then you see it played out just like that. Here we go. If you see right here, it says that the NFL has deadlines. The teams must by 4 p.m. on Friday give their final roster. Okay? That means that he didn't want to say that Shedeur was already number 2 in the beginning of the week because he didn't want the team that they were playing to know so that they could plan for it, because it might be the case that Shedeur ends up in the game.
Normally, hype like this fades in a week, but not with Shedeur Sanders. His buzz just kept growing. Every single day, ticket resale prices climbed higher like it was a luxury concert. Every new practice clip went viral before the team could even post it officially. Even videos of him just walking to his car had fans screaming his name like he just won a championship. That's the kind of magic we're talking about. Shedeur didn't need to win the game because he'd already won the crowd. And in Cleveland, that's half the battle. As the stadium lights dimmed and fans slowly filed out, the energy didn't disappear. It lingered. You could feel it buzzing through the city streets, spilling into bars, echoing through every late-night conversation. Every person was saying the same thing in their own way. We've got something special here, and they're right. Because sometimes, football isn't just about the score, it's about the story. And the Shedeur Sanders story, oh, it's only just beginning. Cleveland's got their spark, their star, their hope, and the world is watching every move he makes. So if you felt that energy too, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who knows greatness when they see it. I'll catch you in the next one.